Thanks for tuning in to the Justin Henry Show. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, join in on the conversation, and follow on all social media platforms. What's good, y'all? It's your boy Justin Henry here on Wednesday, July 12th, 3 o'clock Pacific time, 6 o'clock Eastern on the Justin Henry Show. Y'all already know what it is. We in your boy in fantasy mode right now. We got the Scott Fishbowl going. I'm like 14 rounds in. I feel like my squad is killing it. You can check out the squad on Twitter. On Twitter, you can see how I'm drafting with those rules. It's running back heavy and like tight end heavy. So drafting a little bit different than I'm used to, right? But great draft so far, getting a lot of value. But today, since we talking value, I'm talking about 10X. The guys in the bag. You got to get deep in your bag for some of this value. But I got 8 players who I think can really outperform their draft ADP right now. Some of them you have heard of. Some of them I have not talked about a lot on this channel. And make sure you guys subscribe if you're here for the first time. Subscribe, follow. I do daily content, especially as the season's getting going. We're going to ramp this thing up a whole lot. And you see below, if you want to play underdog, I got an underdog draft that I'm doing tomorrow. If you want to be a part of it, make sure to use my code. It's JHEN with the 3 instead of an E. You can get on that bitch tomorrow. We're going to draft. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to do a draft for the 3 mil, and then I'm going to do a draft with the followers or the subscribers, whatever one you are. So if you're part of that and you want to get in there and use my code JHEN with the 3 instead of the E, get a $100 deposit match. But let's get into this, man. 8 players who will 10X their value, 10X their value in fantasy football this season. Now, these are players that are being drafted outside of the top 50 at their position, right? And the goal isn't like I need somebody to get hurt in order for these guys to have value. The goal is that even if they're not the presumed starter, that they'll have value, right? That's where I'm really trying to sift and find this 10X. It's easy to say 10X if somebody gets hurt. It's easy to say 10X if the player doesn't start the season. But I'm looking deep in my bag right now. It's July, before training camp, before preseason, to find value for you guys. These are players that probably, and when I say 10X, these are guys that should be drafted in like 14-man leagues, right? Or unless you have multiple flex spots in your 12-man league, I would say not 8 and 10, more shallow leagues, no. But like your 12, 14-man leagues, especially 16-man leagues, these are guys that I would be targeted in those leagues. So I'll get to the questions. I'll go about 2 or 3 in and get to some questions. So if you're hanging out with me here on TikTok, on YouTube, on Twitch, whatever you're on, just know I'll get to your questions here in just a little bit, all right? Appreciate the guys who came early into the chat. We got Corey said, Nico Collins is someone who should be on your radar. Not going to be talking about him this episode, but I'm not a real big fan of the Texans wide receiving core. Robert Woods, Nico Collins, John Michie's back, and then CJ Stroud starting. Not a big fan of it. Rocking with Justin Henry all season long. He won me my league last year. You won your league last year. But hey, rocking with me don't hurt, my man. You're almost at 4K. God of gods. Yes, almost at 4K here on YouTube. Please sub. I'm like 20, 30 away. If you hear rocking with me on YouTube or if you're here on a TikTok, it's the Justin Henry Show, baby. Look it up. Give me a sub, bro. We're going to be rocking all season long. So either way, it's going to get rocking. All right. First player I want to talk about on this list of players that will 10X their value. The first player I want to talk about is on the screen cap, Kenny Gainwell. Kenny Gainwell. Now, I know a lot of people are probably like, man, they got DeAndre Swift. They just signed Rashad Penny. There's a lot when it comes to Kenny Gainwell value-wise that you'd have to sift for. Both of those guys in ADP are being drafted well ahead, of Kenneth Gainwell. But the reason why I like him, he had a really nice run for the Eagles, right? And then in the offseason, before they acquired DeAndre Swift for a low price of a 5th-round draft pick in 2025 or 4th-round draft pick in 2025, Kenny Gainwell, they said that they had big plans for him this season. And that's coming off a very strong postseason run where he outperformed Miles Sanders in some of the most key games and moments for this Eagles team in their Super Bowl run, or their Super Bowl contending run, I should say. He's a receiver out the backfield. They use him in the red zone. And now you got 2 guys ahead of him, supposedly, in DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny, both of whom are extremely, extremely injury prone, right? Both of these guys have struggled to stay healthy for an entire full season. But now, when you bring in a guy like Kenneth Gainwell, who already knows the offense, who should be a mainstay at least in some form of capacity, getting somewhere between 8 to 10 touches a game, And now if one of those guys gets hurt, he can assume a goal line role, a receiving back role, a hurry up role. Like, this is a player that probably has more value, and currently he's being drafted at ADP running back 50. Running back 50. There are, I would say, a few things that would hold him back. If DeAndre Swift gets a hold of this starting role, then yeah, it's going to be tough for Kenny Gainwell to break out. Or if somehow Rashad Penny and Jalen Hurts are taking all of the goal line work, then I would be concerned. But as a player you can get as your running back 7, running back 6, like, he goes extremely late in drafts. I think there's a lot of room for him to grow. And yes, I know they're not tied to him. 5th round draft capital, I get it. They're not really tied to him, but he's a player that played well for this team in a playoff run. So give me Kenneth Gainwell as one of my players who will 10x their value. The next player I want to talk about is a receiver who played well last year until he got hurt, Romeo Doubs. Everybody's going to Christian Watson. Christian Watson's the guy. Yes, I talked about Christian Watson on TikTok. I did. I'm one of the first people that absolutely called him out and said that he was going to be, a blow-up player off your bench, off of free agents. One of the first, right? And although Christian Watson does have upside, he has potentially as red zone capabilities, yak ability. Romeo Doubs was the consistent guy before he got hurt. Before he got hurt, he was the guy. And so when I look at this, Jordan Love, he's not the quarterback that Aaron Rodgers is just yet. There's an opportunity for him to become something in Green Bay that's a mainstay. But they've been talking up Romeo Doubs this entire offseason. So as somebody who's probably going to see very similar targets to Christian Watson, there's not really a true, legit third wide receiver on this team. Romeo Doubs is going way, way after Christian Watson. Christian Watson, wide receiver 22. Romeo Doubs, wide receiver 60. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. So for Romeo Doubs, he's got the frame you like to see, big body receiver, 6'2", 200 pounds. They use him in the red zone, in the passing game. There's a lot to like with Romeo Doubs. So he's another player that I'm interested in. All right, couple questions as we get on to the next couple players. Hey, bro, what round Kamara goes? Kamara's going to like the 8th, 9th round right now, but there's with him kind of pleading no contest, I think that there's a little bit more value there. So Kamara should be climbing up your draft boards here pretty soon. Gainwell going to go off against the Giants this year. That's normally Boston Scott's job, but I can see Kenneth Gainwell doing well. What's good, TikTok? Chargers fan? Hell no. Let's see. What do you think about Bateman? I don't really think Bateman. I think that's OBJ. OBJ is the one there, and then Bateman's probably the 2. Zay Flowers the 3. What do you think about Breece Hall? I think he gets a lot of touchdowns. Not back to full strength yet. I wouldn't expect a top 10 finish for Breece Hall at the running back position, but I think there's some meat on the bone. There's some value with Breece Hall that I think we're overlooking. He's not ready yet to take off, be a top 5 running back, but with Aaron Rodgers at the helm, he should see a lot of red zone work. So ready for the season to start? Yes, sir. Me too. Mixon value climbing, correct? Yeah, there's no way Mixon should be going in the 5th and 6th round of fantasy drafts. He's been a top 2 round pick, and nothing has changed with this situation. Nothing. He's not getting suspended. There's talks about him reducing his contract or getting cut. I think he's going to want to get paid. He doesn't want to go to a brand new team and try to earn a spot. They didn't draft anybody outside of Chase Brown. To me, it's a no-brainer. Joe Mixon deserves to be higher value. Thoughts on Brian Robinson? I don't really think a whole lot about Brian Robinson. He's a back-end RB3. Not a lot of upside with Antonio Gibson there in the passing game. Chris Rodriguez drafted. I don't see a whole lot of value for Brian Robinson. He don't really catch passes, and so he's touchdown dependent. He fits in there with like the Jamal Williams, the Isaiah Pacheco's, back-end RB3, high-end RB4. All right, on to the next player. I want to talk about Terrace Marshall. Terrace Marshall currently going as the wide receiver 90. He's ranked as the wide receiver 90 right now in ADP. Wide receiver 90 for Terrace Marshall, who is a guy who was a 2nd-round pick out of LSU, very highly touted coming out, has the big frame, 6'3", 6'4", big body. We saw him last year already have a couple games in the middle of the season where it looked like he was turning the corner, and we didn't see that full production over last year, right? But the Panthers now with the new regime in there, right? They have a brand new regime, Frank Reich in there. Also, Bryce Young is now the starting quarterback. This team isn't attached to any player outside of the ones that they brought in DJ Moore, Adam Thielen, and then Jonathan Mingo, who they drafted. So Terrace Marshall's in there making noise right now with Bryce Young during OTAs. This has been a combo that they've said they're hyping up. right now, that he's had a lot of success here in the offseason. So if things do click for Terrace Marshall in that offense and he does become Bryce Young's guy, who knows if that's true or not, at wide receiver 90, that's free. That's free, yo. Terrace Marshall is free. And if you're really that scared of Adam Thielen, who's struggled to stay healthy, DJ Chark has struggled to stay healthy. Jonathan Mingo still has to work through being a rookie and earn playing time. This is a player, Terrace Marshall, that has youth on his side, size on his side, draft capital on his side, and really an open offense for him to kind of come in and assume a nice role. So give me Terrace Marshall. In this last year, he had only three games where he saw 6 targets. Every single game that he had 6 targets, he had double-digit scoring in fantasy. So to me, if this is a guy that can get 5 to 7 targets consistently throughout the course of this year, if he can be a 80 to 100 target guy somehow, I don't mind it. He's got to earn the playing time, but at wide receiver 90, that shit's free to me. Free to me. Next one, Odell Beckham. I talked about this already on the TikTok page. If you haven't, run up the likes in the comments on that TikTok video. But coming off of an injury, obviously, second ACL, brand new team with Baltimore. There's a lot of concerns with Odell. He hasn't been wildly successful since his days with the Giants, right? We saw him with the Rams, played well down the stretch. Leading into the Super Bowl, was probably on track to win Super Bowl MVP, which would have been crazy until he tore his ACL again. But we didn't see a lot of the success there in Cleveland. He dealt with injuries there as well, and also bad quarterback play from Baker Mayfield. So it's really been since he was on the Giants that we last saw Odell Beckham be an elite receiver. But at wide receiver now, not even 61, he's at wide receiver 62 now. Wide receiver 62 in these rankings. It's wild to say, but Odell Beckham's a massive value. He's not going to be a consistent wide receiver 2 for you, but he has weekly wide receiver 3 upside, and you're getting him as a wide receiver 6 or 7, depending on your league size. Like, Odell has starting capability. The team just paid him $18 million. Lamar Jackson is talking about opening the offense, or the team is talking about opening the offense up, but Lamar's talking about how he loves the weapons that he have, including OBJ, Rashad Bateman, and Zay Flowers, and he wants to pass more. He wants to be less of a rusher and more of a passer. This screams OBJ has tremendous value at wide receiver 62. Imagine he becomes a startable flex for you every week. You're going to win. And Odell's not the kind of player when he's healthy, he's a wide receiver 3 at minimum. That's his floor. So I think there's a ton of value if he even gets 70% of his pre-injury, like what he was pre-injury. I think wheels are up for him. So I want to see him healthy, get through training camp, get through preseason. But worst case scenario, he gets hurt and you only spend a 12th, 13th round pick on him, whatever round it is. I love OBJ at the value this year. He's probably one of my biggest plays as far as finding value. Wide receiver 62 now, I think that's a no-brainer. All right. Couple questions coming in. Keep Amari Cooper in my keeper league. Depends on what round. Where should I look for good fantasy data for a newbie? Follow this page and then also go to like Fantasy Pros is a good spot. Sleeper is a good place to find fantasy data. Draft Sharks, there's a lot. So you got to kind of climb through, but those are some of the good. If you're looking for just data, Player Profile is also Player Profiler is also a good one. Those are some good sites for data. Zero RB the move this year. I think if everybody's taking running backs, then yes. If not, then no. I think you got to play the draft board, especially this year. There's a lot of talent at the top. Mahomes in the 4th or Herbert in the 5th. I would keep Mahomes in the 4th. You ever do live mocks on Sleeper? Yes. And are you still attached to the Fantasy Gods? Yes, I am. So Fantasy Gods is my shit. Me and Dan, we run the shit. So I will always be there. I'm just focusing a little bit more on my personal pages right now. But yes, still attached to the Fantasy Gods. And I mock draft every Friday here on this channel. Doubs is solid, but the problem with him was drops. That's why he's being evaluated lower. I get it, but he was a young player as well. So Christian Watson also suffered with drops last year as well. We're not discounting him. Who would you draft first, Gibson or Brian Robinson? I probably would take Brian Robinson first. I don't really feel like it. I think Antonio Gibson, we do the same thing with him every single offseason. This is the year he's going to catch passes. Eric Bieniemy's offense. Like, we do the same thing with Antonio Gibson every year. Last year or 2 years ago, it was supposed to be he's the next CMC. Like, I'm kind of off Antonio Gibson like everybody else is. They love him on Twitter, but I would take Brian Robinson, but he don't have much upside either. I'd probably stay away from Washington's backfield. Thoughts about Deontay Foreman? I'll get to him in a minute. I'll get to Deontay Foreman in a minute. Who ranks higher, T. Higgins or Devontae Smith? I go with Devontae Smith over T. Higgins. It's close, but I think Devontae Smith's going to be a little bit more consistent than T. Higgins. And what's good? What's good, Jacob? And Tide the Sports Fluent. What's good? Fluent. Now you're more fluent, right? There we go. How you doing, bro? How you living, dog? I see your comment. You always say I don't see your comment. I see your comment, homie. Keeper auction league. He was on my roster. It cost $12. Oh, yeah. $12 for Amari Cooper. Send it. Send it for Amari Cooper. All right. Next couple players. I got 4 more players left. So if you're just tuning in, the 4 players I talked about already were Kenny Gainwell, Romeo Doubs, Terrance Marshall, Odell Beckham. Players that'll 10x, probably 100x their value, right? I got 4 more players for you. The next one is a rookie. A rookie. Deep rookie. Wide receiver 120 in rankings right now. Uh-oh. This is a J-Hen special for you, baby. A J-Hen special for you. Wide receiver 120. And I think he's going to have some fantasy value this year. Michael Wilson. A name you may not know for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, this team has a couple receivers ahead of them, right? They have they got Rondell Moore, Greg Dortch, Hollywood Brown, some interior guys, and Hollywood Brown. That's it. They've also invested in Trey McBride in the draft. And they got Zach Ertz, who's probably on his way out. But they did lose. They lost DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason. So that's a big body receiver that they lost, somebody on the outside. And in comes third-round pick Michael Wilson. There's a path to playing time. And on the offense, it's going to be led by Kyler Murray, who's coming off an ACL. Chances are he's going to be passing a lot more than running this year. Take care of that knee. What's not to like about that situation? The Cardinals aren't going to score a whole lot of touchdowns, but they are going to be behind in games. Hollywood Brown is more of a deep threat. He's very inconsistent at times, struggles with drops. He has foot injuries that have been nagging him throughout his entire career. Greg Dortch, Rondell Moore, those are slot, gadget guys. Michael Wilson is an actual receiver that's going to play on the outside from Stanford. 6'3", big body receiver. You love to see it. Like, he could be the red zone guy for this team that's not going to have really a red zone threat at receiver. Now, Trey McBride or Zach Ertz could be the red zone guy. But at receiver 120 in more shallow leagues, 12-man or more shallow, he's a guy to keep an eye on. In 14 or 16-man leagues, especially if you got to start 3 receivers, it's PPR, and you got 1 or 2 flexes, this is a guy I think may have some sneaky value, especially early in the season. He could be one of those week 1 waiver wire pickups. If Kyler Murray's starting week 1, I think he could be one of those guys where, like, you must go grab him week 1, spend $50 auction budget. Like, that's the guy. If I had to pick anybody out this list that's just going to be a free agent out of nowhere, I kind of think it's Michael Wilson. I don't think he's the greatest player, but I think he's going to catch a lot of people off guard, and you forget, like, he's a third-round guy. So this team invested some draft capital in him. He's got the size. He'll have the opportunity. Give me Michael Wilson. I don't love the situation in Arizona, but if Kyler Murray starts week 1, give me Michael Wilson. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is my next player, and this isn't somebody that I like talking about, but running back 54 off the board, there's a path for Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be useful, flex option at least, as your 5th or 6th RB. I don't think it happens. Now, this is a player that I think has opportunity, but it's more like we've seen him in the past. And I think where everybody's getting mixed up with Clyde Edwards-Helaire is that it's mostly been injuries that have held him back. Up until week 7 last year, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was RB19 in fantasy. RB19 points per game. He was RB19 in fantasy last year. Up until week 7, until the bye when they swapped things out. And he struggled. I think that's a guy who struggled staying on the field. He struggled with consistency and being the guy in that offense. They found something, though, with Isaiah Pacheco. And Jerick McKinnon is still part of this team. But Jerick McKinnon has come out and openly said he's getting older. He doesn't want to take on the workload that he did last year. Also, Isaiah Pacheco is hurt right now to start the season. Will miss almost all of training camp and even into the preseason. This is Clyde Edwards' opportunity to at least get something. Where we saw him being used was in the red zone and in the passing game last year, once Isaiah Pacheco took on more of the work between the 20s. We saw him in the red zone and in the passing game. And you love to see that as a running back. You love to see guys in the red zone and working on the passing game. And who took over that role later? Jerick McKinnon did. So early season, at least, there's a prime opportunity while Isaiah Pacheco's getting up to speed, maybe while they're trying to limit Jerick McKinnon's touches, that we see a little bit more out of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's in a contract season. The team declined his fifth-year option. So he's in a contract year. He's got to stay healthy and he's got to produce. This is a former first-round pick, and I'm not saying he's worth the first-round pick that he was taken at, but he's going to have a lot of opportunity here on this team, even without Clyde Edwards, even without Pacheco, or Jerick McKinnon getting hurt. I think there's a path here to RB3 flex type of value at some point throughout this season, especially during bye week. So while I don't love the player and he's burned me in the past, I'm not giving up on him at running back 54 value. I think that there's a little bit there. All right. I got two more players. Let me get to some more questions before I get to those players. Let's see. Would you rather draft Hollywood Brown or Mike Williams? Give me Mike Williams over Hollywood Brown. Better offense and more consistent role. The only thing I deal with him is injuries, but Hollywood kind of has the same concern. I'd rather have Mike Will made it. Can I just do one like on YouTube? No, you can like every single video you want that I have on YouTube. You can drop a like, a comment, share a thing. Run it up, baby. Run it up. Let's see. What was your league records last season? Out of the 9 leagues that I played in last year that were for money, I won 6 of them. So I was 6-9 in my leagues, 6 out of 9. And then, we were here. If you were with me all season long for the betting and the DFS, like you cashed out. Last year was a really good year. So if you're hanging out with me, you haven't followed the page yet, follow. I go daily, especially throughout the season, do start sits. Trust me, you want to rock with me. Even if I'm one of the people that you trust, like just make me one of the people that you watch. If you watch multiple content creators, trust me, I provide a lot of value, man, straight up. How you feel about Isaiah Hodgins and Shaheed? They're late sleepers. I'm not really in on Isaiah Hodgins. They have too many just outcast receivers. You talk about Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson. They drafted Jalen Hyatt. They just signed Paris Campbell. Like there's too many like wild card receivers. And then Darren Waller, they traded for him too. So I just don't think there's a whole lot there for Isaiah Hodgins outside of the red zone. And then Shaheed, maybe there's some deep plays that he has throughout the year, but he's not somebody I want to consistently start in my season. He probably will let you down most weeks. He'd be a good DFS guy though. You throw him in your lineup DFS, he'll hit 2 or 3 times out the year. There's got to be value in JSN. I think there's value, but more so next year or the year after. I'm not a big JSN guy. A lot of people like JSN, but he's behind Lockett and DK Metcalf right now. He'd have to overpass 2 staples of that receiving core very quickly. Even as a first-round pick, I think it's next year. Sky Moore over Tony. I don't see it, but who knows with KC? I'm taking the guy with more talent, Tony. How do you view Waddle, T, Devontae, Olave? Waddle, Devontae are a tier ahead. Then T. Higgins, then Olave a little bit further down. All right, I got 2 more guys that I'll talk about, and then I'll answer questions for the rest of the time. Let me get to a couple more questions. Any news on Tyreek Hill suspension? I don't think he's getting suspended. I haven't seen anything that indicates that he is. Thoughts on some late-round rookie receivers, Jaden Reed, and then Rashee Rice. Him, Mims, the guy, like I told you, I like 2 of them. I like Michael Wilson, and I like Josh Downs. Those are the 2 rookie receivers that are late round that I like. Justin Henry is that dude. Trust him, man. He called out Christian Watson and basically won me my league. Shout out to you, Ty, for rocking with me. But, yeah, I don't have to toot my own horn because y'all already helped me out with the compliments, so I appreciate y'all. But, yeah, man, I do this shit for real. All right. 2 more, and, I'm not going to be perfect, guys. If you watch these takes, you don't have to go through and draft exactly what I'm talking about, but a lot of times what I say is A, against consensus, but then B, to kind of open your eyes to more possibilities, right? Get you thinking outside the box and have you prepared for your draft. I'm not going to hit 100% on these players and takes. It is what it is. I'm going to have too many takes throughout the offseason. I'm not going to hit on them all. I'll own whatever I say. I will own whatever I say, but I will also adjust throughout the season like you guys saw last year. I will adjust throughout the year. So my offseason takes might be 60%, 65%. I'm going to hit on a lot of them, and I'm going to hit on a lot of contrarian things too. Trust me on that. Things that are against the grain. I'm going to hit on a lot of takes. I'm not going to be perfect. But as the season goes, I get tight. Y'all won with me last year. Y'all won money with me last year if you were doing sports betting. In fantasy leagues, you won those too. So make sure y'all follow. If you're here, follow the page, sub, whatever it is you're watching on, and let's have some fun. All right, last two players. A couple other questions came in real quick. I'll get into these two players. Hold on, give me a second. No deal for Saquon yet. What you think? I'm not worried about Saquon deal. I think he's still top 3 pick for me. Top 3 running back for me. I have him number 2. Where can we get your rankings list? It's coming out next week. I'll have rankings and a draft guide ready to go. How can we support the channel? Good question. You guys can support the channel in multiple ways, either dropping likes and comments. Just run up the comments and the likes on the videos that you guys see. That's probably the easiest way. I got subscriptions here. If you want to pay for a subscription, it's like $2. Don't really do a whole lot for me, but I'm sure the more the merrier. If you want to subscribe to the channel, that's awesome as well. I'll take anything. You can subscribe to the YouTube or drop a super chat on YouTube if you want to do that. I got a draft guide coming out next week, a free rankings list, but then also a $10 draft guide. So you can drop the draft guide. I might have some merch coming out soon. You want to drop a tip? Whatever you want to do, man. Support. The biggest support is just watching and commenting and liking my shit. So other than that, monetarily, if you want to support it, that's up to you. I ain't going to ask a whole lot. Are you going wide receiver or running back with the first pick or second pick? My first pick in PPR drafts is Justin Jefferson and Cooper Kupp. Those are the two. All right, y'all. I got 2 running backs for you now as players that will 10x their value. The running back 62 right now is Ezekiel Elliot. Y'all don't like Ezekiel Elliot, do you? Everybody's like he's washed. He got cut by Dallas. Bro, if Zeke goes to any team, it's because somebody already got hurt. Or he's going back to Dallas, where guess what Zeke finished as last year? He finished as the RB22 last year. I know Tony Pollard's going to assume most of the carries. He's going to be the starter now. But y'all, are we really giving up on Zeke, who every year is a top 12 back? Like, wherever he goes, he's going to look a little slower than we saw the prime Zeke, the top 10, top 5 back Zeke. But you're talking RB62, that's damn near free just because we don't know where he's getting signed. Somebody's going to sign Ezekiel Elliott, and it's probably going to come after an injury happens to a contending team. There's somebody run game right. But Ezekiel Elliott should not be going RB62. You're putting guys ahead of him that have never done shit in their entire career. And we're talking about a guy that was literally the 22nd ranked back in fantasy last year with injuries, getting overtook by Tony Pollard. And he could be going back to Dallas. At worst, this is like a top 35 guy. At worst. But you put him in a situation that's favorable. Say the Bengals do get rid of Joe Mixon and they go get Zeke, and he's the starter there now. Now, how do we view Zeke? Say Zeke goes to a contending team that has a really good pass catcher, a thinner back, but needs a goal line back. And now he's playing the Jamal Williams role. There's value still with Zeke. RB62 is terrible. Terrible. Like, unless you're just assuming he completely drops off, I get it. He doesn't have a team. That's probably the reason why. But no matter what team Zeke goes to, Philly, Cincinnati, they're talking about Houston Texans, talking about Dallas. It doesn't matter where he goes. He instantly creeps into the top 35 running backs. Instantly. I don't know, man. I don't understand that one at all, and I get it. People don't know the situation, but that scared money don't make money right there. If you can get Zeke a little bit earlier than that, I'd reach on him a round or two before that. I mean, it's not like he's going out there and he's just going to get hurt he's getting hurt every time he touches the ball. He's averaging 1 yard a carry. Dude was the RB22 last year. 22. Makes no sense. And then the last player that I want to talk about is Roschon Johnson. Roschon Johnson, running back out of Texas. He was Bijan Robinson's backup, so he's not as heralded as some of the other guys that came out of the draft this year. But going to a situation where he could immediately become a fixture in fantasy within the first week to 4 weeks. I can see a path to that. Khalil Herbert's the guy that everybody's excited about in fantasy. And I think that there's value with Khalil Herbert as well. But there's a strong possibility that Khalil Herbert doesn't pan out, or that he's not able to play in all three phases, the run game, pass game, and then blocking. There's a real possibility that Khalil Herbert doesn't pan out as a starter. And yes, they went and got Deontay Foreman, but he's been more of a backup his whole career. Somebody asked about Deontay Foreman earlier. I don't really see, they signed him, but is he going to be the guy? I think there's more upside with Roschon Johnson. Now, if Roschon Johnson doesn't prove himself during the offseason, yeah, that's why you get a guy like Deontay Foreman and you have him be a backup. He was decent in Carolina. But you draft a guy in the 4th round of Roschon Johnson who is kind of a dog. He's an underrated dog. We're talking about him at RB60. RB60 for Roschon Johnson. That's a player that could 10x his value instantly. Say he's named the day one starter for whatever reason. There's instant value there. And for a guy that was, he carved out a role even with Bijan Robinson there. Like, there's a lot to like with Roschon Johnson, and all the metrics say that he could be a 3-down back. So give me Roschon Johnson. I'm not mad if you scoop him up as your running back 5, running back 6, and then you're kind of just maybe you're hoping a little bit that something happens with Khalil Herbert negatively, or you're hoping that something happens and he passes Deontay Foreman. But there's a lot of upside with Roschon Johnson, who could very well work his way into a sizable role here soon with the Chicago Bears team that's probably going to be out of contention midway through the season. All right, so those are my 8 players that I think can outperform their draft value. I'm going to get to questions right now. Players that are drafted outside of the top 50 at their position, and you're really looking for people like that, especially late in your drafts. You don't want the safe players, the players that have been RB5s, RB6s their entire career. You're looking for guys that could vault up in value, 10x their value in real time. So appreciate y'all watching that. And let's get to these questions. The players, again, for those who are just coming in, the 8 players that I named were Kenny Gainwell, Romeo Doubs, Terrance Marshall, Odell Beckham, Michael Wilson, receiver for the Cardinals, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Ezekiel Elliot, and Roschon Johnson. Those were the 8 names. Pick one: Amon-Ra St. Brown, Garrett Wilson, CeeDee Lamb. I'm going CeeDee Lamb 10 times out of 10. What are your sleeper receivers? I think I did an entire episode on sleeper receivers talking about them. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that, let me know. If I need to do a new episode on that, let me know. But check out the channel, watch the videos. I got a bunch of sleeper receivers on there already. All right, coming back through the comments. If you asked the question, go ahead and answer it again. Close to the Bears situation, Herbert is the man, 240 touches. If you think Khalil Herbert's built for 240 touches, think again. He's got to be able to stay on the field. He's got to be able to stay on the field with his pass blocking. That's another concern there. And his size, he's a little smaller. Let's see. Could you summarize the 8 players real quick? Missed the first couple. Yeah. So the players were Kenneth Gainwell, Romeo Doubs, Terrance Marshall, Odell Beckham, Michael Wilson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Zeke, and Roschon Johnson. So I'll give you a mix of some rookies, some young guys, some receivers, some running backs. Thoughts on Saquon and ETN? Saquon's RB2 for me, the RB2, excuse me, an RB1 candidate, but he's the running back 2 overall. And Travis Etienne, I'm fading. He's a back-end RB2. Love OBJ and Doubs. Yes, sir. Zeke is not 100% done. Why do you think Zeke is 100% done? Tell me. Like I said, he finishes the RB22 last year. Tell me how he's done. Jordan Addison has a void. Thielen, 100-plus targets he will eat. Why are we assuming 100-plus targets for Jordan Addison? Why are we assuming that? A, the offense has to be as good as it was last year, and if they don't bring Dalvin back, I don't think it will be. B, we saw KJ Osborne earn himself a little bit more target share last year. I don't think he's enough to overpass Jordan Addison, but not 100-plus targets for Jordan Addison, who has to earn that. And then also, look at TJ Hawkinson. He's there as well, and he's probably going to earn some targets. So this offense was great last year in a lot of high-scoring games. They have to be exactly that as they were last year, and I just don't see it. What are your opinions on Cam Akers? He's a back-end RB2, kind of low ceiling to me in my opinion, but as long as he's not being drafted in the top 20, I think there's value. The top 20 running backs. Brian Robinson value, I just talked about it. He's a back-end RB3 for me. Can DJ Moore be that guy this season in fantasy? I'm not counting on it. A, he's playing in Chicago. B, the Bears don't pass for a whole lot of passing volume. Like, Justin Fields would have to take a tremendous leap as a passer, passing in like the 3,500 to 4,000 yard range in order for that to happen, and I don't see it. Team also has Chase Claypool. They also have Cole Kmet. They also have Darnell Mooney from last year and a couple of outcast receivers. And mostly it's going to be Justin Fields' legs, Khalil Herbert, Roschon Johnson in this mix in the backfield. So while I see DJ Moore having potential in real-life fantasy to be able to get open and be a viable target for Justin Fields, I don't think DJ Moore is going to be that guy in fantasy. He's more of a back-end wide receiver 3 at best, in my opinion. And he'll be very inconsistent. Is Nico Collins a sleeper? I talked about Nico Collins. I don't trust a lot of the Houston Texans receivers. Like I said, they have 3 guys there that could instantly be in the mix. And with CJ Stroud as a rookie, I'm not really buying any of them. It wouldn't surprise me if Nico Collins had some flex value or wide receiver 3 value at some point this year. But with Robert Woods there, you got John Mechie coming back. Like, I just don't really see it. There's a lot of youth moving going on there. Are your draft guides going to be posted on both TikTok and YouTube? Can't wait. Yes, I'll post them both on YouTube and TikTok. I'll do like a live that day that I release the draft kit. So that way you guys know where to get it, how to buy it. How do you determine a ceiling and a floor of a player? Very good question. You look at opportunity. Opportunity is the greatest tell of a ceiling and a floor of a player and who's like on their heels, right? So you got to know the offense that they're in. You also got to know like they're, especially in PPR leagues, if they're a volume guy, if they're a TD guy. A lot of times draft capital is involved too, or with younger players. Teams spend early round picks on guys they want to utilize. Less of the time, they're going to go with guys that are late round picks. Like those are outliers typically. So size and speed combinations, like smaller players aren't typically used in the red zone like that. Taller players are. There's a lot that goes into ceiling and floor, but a lot of it has to do with circumstance and opportunity within an offense. So I know it's kind of a lot to explain, and maybe I'll go in on like a larger video. I'll try to talk a little bit more about ceiling and floor, but past production, there's a lot that goes into ceiling and floor of a player. Who are you taking with the 4th pick in a PPR draft? Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's the 4th pick after, and that's if Cooper Kupp, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, and CMC are gone. Alexander Mattison, round 3, too early. Way too early for a player that's not that good. He's not that good. Do not take Alexander Mattison in round 3, please. Did someone sign Kareem Hunt yet? No, Kareem Hunt has not been signed. Thoughts on Pacheco for the year? I think he's a fade. He's not somebody that I'm going to be targeting. Very low ceiling. When you talk about ceiling, he's a guy that doesn't catch passes and has other people that take away goal line touches from him. So I don't like Isaiah Pacheco this year. Who do you prefer out of Judy, Mike Will, McLaurin? I go Judy, McLaurin, then Mike Will. Judy, McLaurin, then Mike Will. Higher on Addison or Zay Flowers? I'd rather have Addison than Zay Flowers, just because he does have a better role, but neither of those guys I really want on my team. You have to draft him as your wide receiver 3 or 4. I'd like to see somebody a little bit more proven in that spot or that has more upsides. Both those guys are kind of small to me. Worried about Josh Jacobs or Saquon situation? Not yet. Not yet. I'm not panicking until we hit preseason week 1. That's when I'll panic. If we're at preseason week 4 and nothing's changing in situations, then I'll be a little bit more concerned. But for now, nah. Alexander Mattison is 1st round pick. Hell no. Hell no. There's no world where Alexander Mattison, like there's a chance Dalvin goes back to Minnesota. I don't think there's a way that Alexander Mattison starts the season as the starter for the Vikings without them bringing in a Kareem Hunt, a Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott. They're the team I'm looking at that's probably going to go get a vet. Do you think Debo can ball out without as many rushing attempts? Yes. I just don't think he's not a top 10 wide receiver. He's more of like a wide receiver 2 or 3. Thoughts on Dalton Schultz? You know what? He's a little underrated. And I got to kind of backtrack on him. I'm going to do a little bit more homework on Dalton Schultz as I'm putting together these rankings. I'm not excited about the opportunity, but rookie quarterbacks do tend to use their tight ends, and they paid him to be their tight end. So I am not out on Dalton Schultz. He's just more like high-end tight end 2 to me for now. I will get back to you on Dalton Schultz. He's a guy I haven't spent a whole lot of time on. I'm going to be real. Would you rather have Geno or Anthony Richardson? Give me Geno for the floor. I don't love it. Normally I'm an upside guy, but if Anthony Richardson doesn't start week 1, if it takes him 5 or 6 weeks, then you're in trouble. So if I had to go as a starter, it's Geno. As a backup quarterback, I'd want Anthony Richardson. Where would you take Swift as a back-end RB3? Back-end RB3. So after the top 25 running backs. I got him right now currently as my RB. I have DeAndre Swift as, why can I not go to these running back rankings? Oh, shit, that's why. I have DeAndre Swift as my running back 30. Running back 30. Guys like Michael Thomas, Mike Williams, and Cortland Sutton are not draftable. Why? Why are they not draftable, especially Mike Thomas and Mike Williams? Tell me why. Do you believe the Lions running game is going to put up the same amount of TDs this year? No, I don't think so. I think that team's going to be lower scoring than people think too until Jamison Williams gets back. When you're going with Gibbs, you're going with Montgomery. They got to get a lot more through the air. So I don't think that Lions offense puts up as many points as people think. What if the Vikings don't get a vet? Madison's not that talented. He's a back end RB2. Will averages the floor 60 yards a game? No, I don't see that. I don't see what Madison, when he's played, he's not that good. He's not that good. I don't get it. I don't get the love for Madison. I'm taking him. He would be like a mid-tier to back end RB3 in my opinion. I think his ceiling would be back end RB2. That's Alexander Madison's ceiling. Should I grab Jahmyr Gibbs or Aaron Jones? This depends on your style of play. I think Aaron Jones is the better back, but if you like to play risk, there's some risk that Jahmyr Gibbs does not perform as well as Aaron Jones, who's been a top 12 running back damn near his entire career. But there's a path for Jahmyr Gibbs to be a top 12 to 15 back. So if you play strictly upside, or maybe you took a lot of floor players in your first 3 or 4 picks, and Jahmyr Gibbs slipped to the 5th round with Aaron Jones, then yeah, draft Jahmyr Gibbs. But to me, I'd rather have Aaron Jones. Sources are saying, oh, hold on, this one. Missed a couple. ETN expectations. I think he's going to be involved as a passer. I'm just not really sold on ETN like having a major role. He's being drafted as the RB14. I don't get that value. Like he's more back end RB2 in my opinion than like mid-tier RB2. For a guy that doesn't get red zone touches, he's not going to consistently get 20 touches in a game. And they brought in Tank Bigsby to kind of alleviate some of the rushing workload that he had. I don't see it for ETN. Pick number 9 on Snake Draft. Grab CD first and Amari second. No, Amari Cooper is way too early in the second. Way too early in the second. And if it's not PPR, don't take CD Lamb in the back end of the first. But if it's PPR, grab CD. You could probably get Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, somebody else instead of Amari Cooper there in a second. Source or even a running back. You might even be able to get like a Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, somebody like that. I would not take Amari until probably the 4th round. You can probably get Amari Cooper in the 4th round. Sources saying Eagles camp saying Penny week 1 lead back. Wouldn't surprise me because he's the thickest of all the backs, but he's got to stay healthy. So if he is the lead one back, it wouldn't surprise me. When I talked about Kenny Gainwell, that's a guy late in your draft that could carve out value. You have to take Penny way earlier. You get Kenneth Gainwell, if something happens and he is the guy. I'm talking about players that can 10x their value specifically early on. Fade Jahmyr Gibbs. No, we are not fading Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm just not taking him as high as everybody else. NYG nerd to let Narc walk. Dalvin Cook, I'd better scheme fit anyways. I don't know what you mean by that. JT versus Chubbs. Yeah, I got Jonathan Taylor over Chubb. Are you sold on Justin Fields? Yes, he's a top 5 quarterback in my opinion. What do I mean? What do you mean, what do I mean? What do you mean, what do I mean? Where do you have Calvin Ridley ranked? I have Calvin Ridley ranked a lot lower than most. Calvin Ridley I got as my wide receiver 30. Wide receiver 30. That's where I got Calvin Ridley ranked. And do I think Calvin Ridley is a true wide receiver 1? Yes, just not this year in this offense. I think guys have carved out their roles, and until we see Trevor Lawrence take a massive leap as a passer, I'm out on Calvin Ridley being like a 1,300 to 1,500 yard guy. Like he's more if he was like a 1,000-yard receiver with like 6 touchdowns, 70 catches, 80 catches, I see more of that kind of role for him than like this massive breakout year, especially when Christian Kirk was an 1,100-yard receiver for the Jags last year. Zay Jones was an 800-yard receiver. Evan Ingram turned up late. Travis Etienne's a pass catcher for this team. Trevor Lawrence uses his legs on the ground in the red zone. It just doesn't smell like a true like top 25, top 20 wide receiver season for Calvin Ridley. Thoughts on Watson? Is that Christian Watson or Deshaun Watson? I talked about both already. Devers or Seager? Rafael Devers. And I don't even know baseball like that, so I don't see it. Every time Madison has been given 60% of the snaps at minimum 16 fantasy points per game. Those are in spot starts as well. He hasn't consistently done that. There's been times where he started and put up duds. So I gotta check the numbers on that because I don't know if 60% of the snaps, minimum 16 fantasy points a game. I need to see that to believe it. My guy, I haven't seen you live in a minute. Irv, what's good, my dude? What's good? I've been back for like 3 weeks now. Where you been at? Where can I view your rankings? Rankings will be out next week. Rankings and draft guide will be out next week. Where should be drafting CD among the receivers? Love the content. Appreciate you, Jack. We should be drafting CD Lamb. I have him right now in my top 7 at receiver. I think he's my number 6 receiver. No, he's my number 7 receiver. Yeah, he's right around the range of like AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs, Garrett Wilson. That's the kind of range that I'm drafting CD Lamb. So it's all preference at that point. Those are the similar tier to me outside of the top 5 guys. Any one of those 4, I would say Garrett Wilson's at the bottom, but AJ Brown, Diggs, and CD Lamb are kind of interchangeable for different reasons. When we talk about like ceilings, CD Lamb probably has the highest ceilings. Stephon Diggs probably has the highest floor. AJ Brown has the biggest potential week to week, like biggest breakout potential any given week. So I see them all having similar value. They're similar tier to me based on preference. Then you can start to get kind of creative with like bye weeks, or if you're really looking at like the weather in Philly later on in the year, like you can start to really dial in Buffalo weather. If Dallas has 2 home games during that time or weak opponents, that's where I start to tinker with those rankings. What do you think about a guy like Drake London? When Ritter played, he got 30% of targets. I love Drake London this year. And I was also with Kyle Pitts out, so be careful with those numbers. But yes, I love Drake London this year. I think he's my wide receiver 22. Going after guys like Mike Evans, Deebo Samuel. He's kind of like that next bunch with like Christian Watson to me. Some of those unproven guys. So I like Drake London a lot this year. I think he has loads of potential, especially as a wide receiver 3 for your team. Pick 2 in a keeper league. Jeff is asking, he said, pick 2, Kelsey in the first round, Chase in the first round, Kupp in the 3rd round, Stevenson in the 10th, or Breece Hall in the 12th. Is that something you can keep on another year? Because I would do Breece Hall in the 12th and Cooper Kupp in the 3rd. I think that gives you a lot of upside there with Cooper Kupp. Chase and Kelsey are already first-round picks, but Kupp is probably a top 3 pick in PPR leagues at minimum. And then Breece Hall is a guy you can keep for years if you can keep him at that 12th round value. Should I trade Waddle for Wilson? Garrett Wilson for Jalen Waddle? I think it's a pretty even deal. I'd probably rather have Garrett Wilson for this year. Long term, probably Waddle. What can I get for Henry in Dynasty? I keep him and win your league. Keep him and win your league. I think Cole Kmet is a solid late round tight end. No. For the simple reason that they brought in DJ Moore, they brought in Robert Tonyan, and Cole Kmet only had a little stretch of games anywhere where he was super effective. Like it wasn't like he was super effective the entire season. So I think Cole Kmet is a guy that I probably would fade. I'm not gonna lie. He had that nice stretch of games at the end, but no. If I can get 2-3 stud receivers and have Madison as my RB1, I'll be happy. Good luck with you, man. There's not a whole lot I could do to convince you otherwise. I'm just not a big Madison guy, and he's not an elite talent. Like I like to get players who are elite talents, and they got tied. Like I kind of like drafting Ty Chandler in a 14 or 16 man league. I got him in Dynasty. I'm not anticipating Alexander Madison keeps on that role for the entire season, and I'm not sold on Alexander Madison being the guy that's going to command a full workload over the whole season. I could be wrong though. I'll be wrong on that one. Convince me not to draft Kyle Pitts again. I never would convince you not to draft Kyle Pitts. I've been a Kyle Pitts advocate. I was one of the guys on here who was wrong about Kyle Pitts last year. I was telling people to draft him in the 3rd round last year. I thought Kyle Pitts had all the potential in the world. So it was a miss. He got injured. You know, it sucked to be on the wrong end of that, but I'm not going to tell you not to draft Kyle Pitts. I think he will break out. No Stevenson. I don't like Stevenson long term. I think Stevenson maybe this year he provides value for you, but if it's a keeper league, you can hold on to multiple years. Breece Hall is that dude. You're gonna want Breece Hall. Stevenson's probably gonna be out of there in a year or two. So no Stevenson. You look like Luka Doncic. Thank you. I get told that all the time. Sorry, I didn't see your answer. Someone called, should I trade Waddle for Wilson? I said, if you're looking for this year only, go with Garrett Wilson. I think Waddle's the better long-term player. Hall over Stevenson? Yes, Hall over Stevenson, 100%. I'm not worried about Hall's injury. I'm worried about it this year, but if it's in a keeper league and you can keep him multiple years at round 12 value, do that. He'll be better next year. Thoughts on Olave, Chris Olave? I talked about him. I think he's a fade at wide receiver 12. You're drafting him with guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Garrett Wilson, above guys like Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper. You're paying a pretty hefty tag right now for Chris Olave in anticipation that he breaks out, that he becomes this 1,300-yard player. He doesn't catch touchdowns. He's not a huge receptions guy. So you're anticipating like Derek Carr would have to turn this dude into a 100-catch guy, 8 touchdown in order to even get close to the value of a top 12 receiver. And I don't see it. He had 3 games last year, 3 big games. And yeah, you could point to like when Jameis was a quarterback or Andy Dalton was trash. That doesn't tell the whole story with Chris Olave. Michael Thomas is also back in the fold. I don't see what everybody else sees with Chris Olave. I get the numbers and the metrics supported that, but that was also with Michael Thomas out of the lineup. That's also with the team that was chucking from behind most of the season. Andy Dalton was letting that thing fly at all different points of the year. I don't see the same thing with this team that's invested in the running back position with Jamal Williams and also drafting Kendre Miller and having Alvin Kamara on the team. Michael Thomas back. I don't see top 12 finish at all for Chris Olave. Let's see. You couldn't pay me ever to draft Pitts. Again, lost 3 leagues of him. Hey, if you play fantasy with your emotions, you're going to lose every time. Why would you not draft Pitts ever again? He's a 22-year-old tight end, one of the greatest talents individually. We saw him have a 1,000-yard rookie year. You would have drafted him last year, but because he had a down year and got hurt, you'll never draft him again. Don't play fantasy with your feelings. That's the easiest way to lose. I'll never draft this player again because they lost me a league last year. Players bounce back all the time. We saw Saquon Barkley. There's people who said, I'll never take Saquon Barkley again. He lost me my league when he tore his ACL. He was trash the next year when he came back. I'll never take Saquon Barkley again. What did he do the year after? Top 3 running back. Get out your feelings with fantasy. It's all about facts on this side. Every year is a new year. So don't play fantasy with your feelings, dog. Said it last year, and we'll say it again. This best fantasy show on TikTok. Chicago Investigator. Appreciate you, dog. Would it be crazy to draft Kelsey with your first round pick? Yeah. I think first round, if you're at the top of the first round, yes. Back into the first round, no. But like top 6 pick, yeah. Top 6 pick, you're crazy to draft Kelsey. I think you're chasing after what he was last year. All right, YouTube, I'm going to end this on YouTube. I'm heading over to TikTok. I appreciate y'all watching. I'm going to be answering TikTok questions for the next 20 minutes or so. Make sure y'all check out the channel tomorrow. I will see you tomorrow. Peace out.